Good morning, dear students. Welcome to our subject, English 9, Quarter 3, Week 1. I am Rafi G. Aguilar, your teacher. Before we proceed to our formal discussion this morning, of course, don't forget to visit our official website, GAITF, that seems that school/LCMS. I repeat, GAITF, that seems that school/LCMS. Don't forget to log in your account, click the English 9 for the quarter 3, go to the learning path, and download all the PDF files of your PowerPoint presentations, modules, and don't forget to answer the activities and quizzes I have uploaded there. So class, are you now excited for today's discussion? I guess everyone is now excited, so I will not make this any longer. Then let's begin with the discussion. So what do you think is our topic for this morning? Well, I'm sure that you have lots in your mind right now. So let's begin. Okay? So for the learning objectives this morning for today's lesson, after going through this module, the learner is expected to A. Determine the different types of biases and prejudices. Second, identify statements that show biases and prejudices. C. Differentiate biases and prejudices. D. Cite examples of biases and prejudices in a real life. And last but not the least, provide ways on how to minimize or avoid bias and prejudice. So based on the given objectives, what do you think is our lesson for this morning? Okay, so it can be, okay, so biases and prejudices. So this may be our topic for today's discussion. Our role as part of society and our way of being sensitive to others matter as we interact with other people. The way we communicate, think, believe, and feel towards other individuals, groups, ideas, events, and things may have positive and negative impacts. Dealing with others without bias and prejudice is essential in our interaction. This module is made for you to understand the biases and prejudices in the community. It provides you some of the common examples of this based on the real situation or life experience. This is to help you develop the important skills of critical reading in determining the existence, bias, and prejudice, which consequently empowers you to contribute happier and fairer community culture and improvements in the attainment of healthier feelings and communications. Every day we communicate with people and make countless decisions. Our decisions tend to be influenced by our environment and stereotypes that already exist in the society into which we were born. This decision may be a product of our thinking and instinctive feelings that play a strong part in influencing our judgments away from being balanced or even-handed. So, the way we communicate with other people and how we made our own decisions. So, it could be tend by the influence of the environment, the people surround us has something to do, or it may affect with our decision making. Same as when we are communicating with other people, it depends on how we use our language depending upon the manner of the tone of our diction or the way we speak or how we communicate with them. So through that, it could affect the decision making as well as the communication towards other people. So it could be environment and of course stereotypes. What do you mean by stereotypes? Stereotypes means they are only depending on what they believe. So in other words, they do not believe changes. Or maybe they are just sticking to what they've learned or what they have they have learned from their generation. So that's what we call as stereotype. They usually depend on what they believe in their generation. So they do not adapt, they do not adapt the changes of what is happening. Okay, so any more question? Okay, we shall proceed. So have you been judged before because of your appearance and behavior? So all of us been judged because of our appearance and behavior. So we cannot deny the fact that everyone experienced such judgment. Even myself, I'd been also judged by other people because of my appearance. Because way back, for how many years, I was very thin, skinny. So they usually called me palito, pot-pot, or what they call in Bisaya, they called it liwang kaayo. So that means that's how they judge, They judge based on our appearance. And I'm pretty sure that every one of us is being judged by others because of our physical appearance and as well as our behavior. So it could be you're acting weird, something like that. That's the way of judging their appearances and of course behavior. Next question. Have you selectively listened to someone who is speaking in preference to your choice? So are you depending your choice to someone? Maybe, let's say, I want you to be that kind of a person, and then you rely on him or her. So that is how you selectively listen to someone. So who do you usually listen? It could be your parents, because your parents knows you better. But when you are now in the right age, you have your own decision. So you do not rely with others, you listen to your own self. So that is how you selectively listen to someone who is speaking in preference to your choice. But we are not born to be like that. Like there is someone who will be able to dictate what would be our wants and dislikes, right? Likes and dislikes, yes. So in that way, of course, when you are now in the right age, you have your own decision. So you yourself are the one who is the boss of your own decision. Okay. So next question. Have you become receptive or friendly to certain people only? Okay, so this question is too personal. So yourself can answer that. But if I'm going to answer that question, of course, I have become receptive or friendly to a certain people only, because trust can be earned. Yes, and it's hard to find trust with others. But I'm not usually closing my door to them. I am open with anyone. But when it comes to trustworthy, it's not just a very, very easy to give others. But it depends upon the person and how he or she handles it. Okay? So I'll leave you that question. And you yourself will be the one to think of it or answer it by your own self. Next question. Have you ever experienced not being selected and not being given a favor? Of course, we all have experienced that. Especially when you are expecting that you will be the one to be on that position, or either you will be the one to be the major character, the major cast, and then suddenly it changes because you're not eligible to do that. Yes, there are lots of rejections. I've been also rejected by many. So but that's part of our life, ba? It's part of our life, and at least we've learned something from that. And that's very important. And of course, there's always a perfect time for us. So if we are not enough on this day, well, for sure we will be enough for the next day. You always remember that. If I am not enough today, there is always a chance for us to be enough for the next day. That's it. That's how you motivate yourself. That's how you put yourself from negativity. So it's like an optimism, no? The characteristic of being optimistic. Like you don't have to think it negatively, but to think it positive way. Like you are going to improve on the next day. Always remember that if I am not enough today, tomorrow I will be enough. I will, or more than enough. That's it. So our topic for today, class, is very, very interesting. So I hope that you will listen carefully, and I hope that you will learn from our lesson for today that you could use or bring from the reality. You could apply it. So yeah, it's very interesting. So I hope that you will enjoy the entire discussion. Whether purposely or unintentionally, this can be very real and potentially detrimental consequences in society and our being because of our prejudiced thinking and biased actions. Now let us process the following actions below. So what do you mean by biases and prejudices? So what comes to your mind when you hear the word bias and prejudice? Okay, so bias and prejudice are closely related and often used interchangeably. Both have a negative impact on our dealings. So let us explore the differences between these concepts. Bias is a tendency to look at things in a certain way in preference to another way. It means a tendency to favor or support or against a particular one person, group, thing, or point of view over other, resulting in unfairness. Examine the scenarios A in the activity above, and the second statement shows favoritism and unfairness resulting in a bias. So when you say bias, there is favoritism or there is unequal treatment, no? That is bias. Understood? Okay. So that is bias. There is an unequal. When we say unequal, not fair, not balanced, not the same treatment. That is considered as bias. Okay. So some of the most common types of bias are the following. So let's examine. First is anchoring bias. So what is anchoring bias? So anchoring bias, this happens when people are too relied on current information or the initial information they find in decision making. Example, from what I know, I chose you because I believe others are not as good as you. So what makes the sentence or the statements biased? Of course, if you're going to analyze the statement, from what I know, Meaning, he or she is only basing on what he know, but not really basing on the other information, right? So it's only basing through his or her self. So that makes the statement bias. Okay, next we have the media bias. Okay, so the media bias, this happens when the journalists and news providers, no, news producers in the mass media select what to report and cover. Example, as a witness to the incident, I can attest that the reported news is far from what I see because the events are reversed and true. So what makes the statements bias? Of course, the reporter's news is far from what I see. So meaning he is also relying to what he saw. So meaning the reporter is not saying the accurate information to the viewers or the listener. So they do not base what is really the accurate the accurate things that happened on that particular news. So that is bias. Media bias, okay? Next. Third, we have the confirmation. So the confirmation, this happens when one tends to search for, interpret, favor, and remember information supporting one's belief and views. So maybe the stereotype thing will falls here, no? Okay, so when he found out, example, when he found out that the report did not agree with his views, he immediately researched facts to prove that he was right. So that is confirmation, no? They have confirmation, so maybe they clarify or they validate whether the report of the reporter is accurate or not. Next, we have the halo effect. What do you mean by halo effect? So this happens when one sees the wonderful thing about a person and let the perceptions on everything else about that person be distorted. Example, among the applicants, only Leo's papers were completely reviewed because the manager was impressed with his awards and commendations. So by that, it's a halo effect. There is biases, right? Because the manager is only basing on what? The presentation of the applicant only. So after seeing the presentation of the applicant, they disregard others, including their commendations, their awards. So that is bias. There is no equal treatment. They did not even review the papers of the applicants, but only one person, one applicant rather. So that is bias. So that is a halo effect. Okay, so those are biases. Now let's proceed to prejudice. So what do you mean by prejudice? Okay, so prejudice, it refers to prejudging before looking at the evidence. So that is bias, no? So meaning the judgment is already exist even if it's not finished yet, right? So it's prejudging. Okay? So it refers to the prejudging before looking at the evidence. So it is an unfavorable opinion or feeling beforehand or without knowledge, thought, or reason. Prejudice can have a strong influence on how people behave and interact with others, particularly with those who are different from another group. This can be observed in the second statement of a scenario be from the activity above that can be found on your module. Okay, so the most common types of prejudice includes are the following. First is racism. So what do you mean by racism? Okay, racism, this is the idea that groups of people exhibit different personality characteristics and can be separated based on the dominance of one race over another. So racism exists when you are comparing that person about his appearances or maybe his culture. So usually, for example only, usually if you are black or white or brown, depending upon the color of your skin, you will be judged by that. So that's considered as racism rather. So the groups of people exhibit different personality characteristics and can be separated based on the dominance of one race over another. That is racism. So, okay, example. All Chinese in the country are considered virus carriers due to the COVID-19 disease. Okay, so based on the statement, they are accusing Chinese the carrier of COVID-19. So that is racist. Anyone can be a carrier of the viruses. But this is not on their culture or their race. Ang lahi nila. So that is racism. Next is the sexism. Okay. So, from the word itself, sex, the root word there is sex. So, it could be talking to the gender. Okay, so this is a prejudice based on sex or gender. So, of course, when you say sex or gender, that includes male and female. Usually, sexism exists when somebody else is judging to the gender of that particular person. So, the LGBTQ is always the main subject or the main victim of this, what we call this, prejudice. No? There is an equal treatment. There is a judgment between the gender the gender of the person. So when you are gay, when you are gay, lesbian, etc., you are judged, and that is sexism under the prejudice. Example of this: women are considered weak and lack the strength and ability to do the work of men. So from here, of course, women are considered weak. So that is very unfair. That is prejudice. And this is one of the examples of the gender and equality, right? Because the women are not given a chance to do compared to men. So what men can do can also be done by women. Yes. So there is always a gender and equality. So yes, gender and equality. Of course, women empowerment. Okay, next we have the classism. So this is a prejudice based on a social class or grouping of individuals based on wealth, occupation, income, education, and social network. Okay, so example of that: the poor are uneducated and do not help our country. They should not be treated well by the government. So that is classism. They did not give any treatment, any equal treatment to the others. So what we call this, justice are for the rich people only. So that is classism. They disregard the poor people over the rich people. So that is classism. Ageism. Okay, so ageism, this is a prejudicial attitudes toward older people, old age, and the aging process. So, of course, it refers to the senior citizens. So, maybe they were not given any rights, no, or not attention compared to the younger ones. So, that is ageism. Example, all adults should not be hired because they only become a burden, especially those who deserve to retire. So that is unfair, right? That is ageism. Next, we have the religion. Religion, this is the attitudes towards a person or group differently because of the particular beliefs about religion. So, of course, religion, the most very sensitive, the most very sensitive topic to be discussed. Example, he lost his job because of his religion, which was believed to conflict with his employer. So that is an example of religion. And those were mentioned, the racism, the sexism, the classism, the ageism, and the religion. Those are the common types of prejudice. Yes. And for the biases, so we have the confirmation, the media bias, the halo effect, and etc. So always remember that, class. So these types of prejudice can also be form of bias. Similarly, a person can be biased because of prejudice. However, prejudice and discrimination are different. So there is why they are intertwined. They are connected both. However, discrimination are different. Prejudice refers to a person's thought or attitude, while discrimination is the behavior acted upon by a prejudice regarding a certain group of people. So to clarify the confusion between the bias and prejudice, bias is based on what the person's attitude or thought, while the discrimination, it is the behavior acted. So meaning, if we're going to translate it in Tagalog, no, ang bias ay base lamang sa kung ano ang iyong iniisip at kung paano mo ito sa iyong behavior sa iyong ano ba yung batasan? Sa iyong sa iyong attitude and sa iyong iniisip. Okay. While ang diskriminasyon naman ay tumutukoy sa paano mo isinasagawa ang iyong behavior into action. No? Okay. So, is everyone now understand the differences between bias and prejudice? So, it's quite simple, right? And it's very interesting. Always remember that, class. Okay, so that's all for today, class, and I hope that you've learned something today. So, before we end up this session, of course, don't forget to visit our official website, log in your account there, and download all the PDF files. And of course, don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel so that you are updated on our latest video happening on YouTube. And of course, again, this is Rafi Jaguilar, your English teacher, now signing off. Thank you, class, and have a nice day. God bless everyone. Stay safe.